Danish pork. Powdered milk from New Zealand, grown in South Australian beef. Sardines from Portugal. Better than words, this shelf in an English market illustrates Britain's dependence on the world for food. In the past, British world trade paid for the enormous quantities of food imported annually. But two exhausting wars, the dwindling of the empire and the loss of vast investments overseas, led to the serious economic crisis of recent years. The United Kingdom is much too small to feed the 50 million people who are crowded into an area 2/3 the size of California. Even with the most severe austerity, about 60% of the food supply must be brought in from other countries. But every effort is being made to increase farm production. Perhaps more than any other British group, farmers hold the key to their island's future. This is a large modern farm in the south of England, not far from Henley-on-Thames, where the famous rowing regattas are held. It is harvest time, and the grain stands ripe and ready to be reaped. Since early morning, the men of the farm have been hard at work in the fields. The manager of this farm is John Doble, a young agricultural specialist who rents about 2/3 of his land from the University of Reading. Because of the very high death taxes in Britain, estates like this have been turned over to non-profit institutions. Although he is primarily an administrator, Mr. Dobell takes his turn on the new combine harvester, so the driver can have his midday meal. There are 9 full-time field workers, many of whom have lived in cottages on the farm all their lives. This is an unusually modern farm. Both in its machinery and its methods, it typifies the emphasis on mechanization in Britain, but some was sent from the National Aid Program. As in all countries where land is at a premium, the fields are cultivated more carefully than where there is vast acreage. The result is a greater yield per acre than in the United States. A farm worker's minimum wage is set by law at roughly £5 for a 47, although this amounts to only about 15 American dollars. The cost of living is much less here, and there is overtime pay for work on weekends and holidays. Mr. Dobell's own land and that which he rents covers 620 acres, a very large farm by British standards. But it is divided into 12 separate plots, some as far as several miles from the main farm building. This method of scattered plot farming is just one of the changes that mechanization has brought to rural districts. Throughout the British countryside, there are picturesque villages that outwardly appear unchanged from the days of Queen Elizabeth. Yet, many of these hamlets are surprisingly up to date. The old remains, but the new is here too. Even television. As on most British farms, Mr. Dobell's barns are made of brick. Lumber is scarce and too expensive for widespread use in frame building. A large part of the grain crop goes to feeding the many animals. For the farm's primary source of revenue is the dairy herd that supplies milk to the nearby town of Bracknell. Mr. Dobell has also made this a modern poultry farm with over 400 laying hens. Here, too, the very latest methods are used to increase the farm's output. The main house at Ship Lake Court Farm is the Dobell's home. Like 400 acres of their land, they rent it from the University of Reading, which received it as a bequest from the former estate owner. Mr. Dobell's daughter, Valerie, age 13, is home from her school on holiday. His 7-year-old boy, Brian, hopes someday to become a farmer. His miniature farm toys are his favorite playthings, and he can discuss his father's animals and machinery with surprising knowledge. Mrs. Dobell does her own housework. In her spare time, she helps her husband with the many papers and forms that are part of running any large farm. Unlike many American farm wives, Mrs. Dobell cooks only her family's meals, for most of the workers can come in from the fields to their own homes. Farmers must also observe food rationing in Britain. But because this is the first day of harvest and the children are home from school, Mrs. Dobell has prepared an unusually large meal. The roast on the table represents the meat ration for the whole family for about 2½ weeks. The Dobells are proud of their farm and of the way they have developed it to its present modern state. Like farmers everywhere, they are particularly proud of the prizes they have won at various local fairs. In the afternoon, Valerie mounts her pony for a ride through the lanes and fields of her father's holdings. She was brought up here on the farm and has many friends among the workers' families who live in what are called tied cottages. These cottages rent for as little as 3 shillings, or roughly 45 cents a week. Although the farm workers' wages seem small by our standards, the low cost of shelter helps to offset the difference. Mr. Dobell regularly rotates his fields between arable crops and grass pasture. This replenishes the soil and at the same time provides food for his large dairy herd. Through hard work and sound planning, he has developed Ship Lake Court into an unusually advanced farm. There are not many like it in all of England. But in its use of the latest machines and scientific methods, it illustrates the important trend toward modernization that has taken place throughout British agriculture. Of all the changes he has introduced, Mr. Dobell is especially proud of his modern dairy, a 10-place shed with the latest sanitary equipment. It is kept spotlessly clean, and the cows are tested regularly for tuberculosis. The milk goes directly from the electric milking machines to a cooling system that keeps it fresh for pasteurization. At first, some of the men questioned Mr. Dobell's changes, but with increased production and less heavy labor, they now approve of the new ways. Late in the day, Mr. Dobble, his son, and his father, who is a retired farmer, inspect the field. The work continues, even into the long summer evening, for this is the time when a whole year's labor bears fruit, when the land yields food to the men who planted and nurtured it. To the Dobbles, this is a time of thanksgiving and deep satisfaction, for the grain is good and the harvest will be full.